Man, we got some traffic out here today, folks. What's up? What's going on? What's going on? Let's let everyone get on board, and then we'll jump on into the subject. Give me a few. I know it's been a while since I've been on YouTube, but I really don't feel like doing a Twitter space right now. I get kicked off Twitter every time, and the lighting is like drastically different. That's really weird. But it's all right. We'll work with it. What's up? What's up? We got everyone coming in. What's going down, folks? Good day today, isn't it? So, Judge Torres, huh? You know, I really hate to do the I told you so's, but I can remember a bunch of people. Well, first of all, people were panicking about the lawsuit. I told folks, man, don't worry. You know, at worst, the institutional cells, due to the lack of them filing a Form D exemption, would likely be deemed securities, which is fine. It's not the token itself, it's just the way that they packaged it, right? But that ultimately the token would not be a security. That happened. And then after it happened, everyone got nervous about the appeal, right? And people were messaging me and they were saying, oh no, T, you know, the SEC is going to appeal, and then, you know, it's going to get deemed a security, and this is going to, you know, have to go to the Supreme Court. And what do I tell folks, man? I said, listen, that's not going to happen, all right, for several reasons. But you got to understand something. When you start talking about that type of a community, I'll share something with you, and I believe I've shared this with you guys before. I was the senior systems administrator who served as the HOSA for the ODAR, which is the Office of Disability Adjudication Review for Social Security Administration. All right. When I had this position, what I didn't realize is how unique the environment would be in comparison to other IT environments that I had worked in. The reason why this environment was unique is because it was comprised almost entirely, and one of my subs on here is actually a really good friend of mine. His name is Curtis, not Kurt Moore or K Moore, but another Kurt, another KM, ironically enough, right? He actually worked with me. He was I want to say he was a paralegal when we worked there, and I was the IT for a staff of over 100 folks, right? I think it was around 100. But what made it unique is that I worked with lawyers. So we had lawyers, we had adjudicated law judges, we had paralegals, we had legal assistants, and we had administrative assistants as well. What I learned in working in an environment like that is that when you start talking about the legal field, these guys stick together, okay? Meaning you're not going to see, very rarely would you see a situation where a judge made a decision and then another circuit or another court overturned that judge's decision if there wasn't any sort of criminality attached to it, wrongdoing, fraudulent activity, or anything nefarious associated with her ruling, right? The legal community is small. I tell you what, last time, I'll tell you something else. The last court case that I had, which was family in nature, nothing major, I got a lawyer, really good lawyer, pit bull of a lawyer, if you will. His name is John Gross Close. And I also learned that in their community, without going into detail about my case, is very small as well. So anytime you're dealing with judges and lawyers, that's a tight-knit community. And if you think the SEC is going to essentially have to go to the same judge to file permission for an appeal, that essentially handed down a ruling that they didn't agree on, and this is just going to fly, and she's going to okay it and let them appeal, and then you think that this is going to go to other judges outside of her court, and then they're going to essentially side with the SEC just because they're the federal government. You're in the wrong, man. Okay. That's not Annalisa's wheelhouse. You know, this is essentially a civil case. This isn't federal. Well, I mean, the regulatory body is federal, but this is not one of those cases where they didn't even have any fraud or criminality associated with it. So this was why I was telling folks, you got to stop stressing yourself out about this. Okay. Let me scroll up. First, let me get out of this hot car, man, because it is hot in here. Oh, give me a sec. Put the Challenger in the garage for a little bit, guys. Hey, I tell you, just to offer disclosure, man, I swear I've been with every sort of goddamn either appliance, yard, or car problem this year, man. So check this out, right? And I want to give you guys a tip. I actually put it on my Facebook. If you have an all-wheel drive vehicle, make sure, if you haven't, that you go in and you get what's called your transfer case maintained. Because if you don't, that off tops is a $4,000 fix if it breaks or if something goes wrong with it, right? And it's only like $200 or $300 there we go, there's the sun, to maintain it, right? But see, they don't really tell you about transfer case maintenance. Like, that's not a common thing, right? That a shop is going to come out and disclose to you. It's just going to break at some point, and then they're going to hit you over the head with it. So there's that. So I had 2 fuel injectors go out on my Chrysler apart from each other. That's a $1,400 fix. Transfer case was $4,000. The fence that I had to replace was $3,000. The tune-up on the Lincoln MKX was $3,000. What else did I get done? All sorts of stuff, man. Just one after another. Dryer went out, had to replace the dryer, right? And I had already gotten the dryer fixed like a few years ago. It was a Samsung, of course. They have no business making washers and dryers, but whatever. It came with the house. But had to replace that. The freaking plumbing, because people want to put shit down the garbage disposal that doesn't belong there, ended up cracking the garbage disposal, leaking into the particle board floor, rotting it. I had to remove everything out of there and looked at it because I just keep cleaning supplies down there. But when I noticed that the sink was backed up, I was like, I got to digging. And then when I saw that, oh shit, there's a hole that the fluid had put into the particle board. So I had to have that ripped up, had it dehumidified and the damage fixed to the subfloor, which was minimal. Had a new plywood floor, replaced the particle board, had that treated, and then got new plumbing infrastructure and a new garbage disposal. So it's just, I'm saying this, and I'm saying this for a reason, right? I'm saying this because I know there's a lot of people out there. I've been getting hit up about when do I think things are going to take off, because things are really difficult right now. People are on hard times. They're spending a lot of money, or they don't have a lot of money. And that's just a fraction of things that I've had to deal with, over the past year and a half, right? It's rough. I have to say, man, my dad has definitely been in my corner. I mean, look, man, I was shelling out. And then, my pops came through with some support that definitely, man, he doesn't even know, man, because I'm not going to tell him, right? But the amount of money that has been shelled out is just ridiculous, right? But when you have supportive family members, it definitely helps out, man. So shout out to my pops. because it got to a point, man, where I was just like, what the hell is not going wrong right now? And I usually don't have time frames like that where it's just one thing after another. But for those of you who are having that happen, it's a rough season, and things are, if you have kids especially, things are double in price. Hyperinflation's a thing. I know people are struggling. Jobs are not, their promotions and their, cost of living allowances are not matching the rate of inflation that's going on right now. So it's making things really difficult for everyone, especially if you have debt, if you have a mortgage, if you have car payments. If you're debt free, that's the way to go. And I'm going to tell you something right now, and I typically don't say this, and it's not official financial advice. I'm not an official financial advisor. This is simply my perspective. You can take my perspective and pair it with yours only after you've done your due research. Make sure that you understand the risk with all markets, and also especially make sure you understand the risks associated with jumping in the crypto market before you make any significant purchases or purchases at all. Now, with that being said, I'm going to tell you straight up, if XRP or any of your crypto gets to a point where you can eliminate your debt and still have a significant amount of your holdings, do it. All right. Because inflation, in my opinion, isn't going to get any better, right? I think in the short term or medium term, it's only going to get worse, right? Now, this doesn't mean sell 75% of your bag to go debt free, right? Because you can leverage debt, and there's ways to control it. There's ways, to consolidate it, etc., right? But if you got a few mil that pops up in your account, and maybe you got $65,000 in debt, pay it off. Okay, pay it off, and then sit on your assets, use your income to comfortably live, and then wait for the utility to kick in, because I think we'd likely see something speculative happen prior to utility, and it wouldn't even just be utility, right? That would cause the price hike to happen, and that's something that I wanted to come on here and talk about to you guys. Utility is happening right now, right? I can remember the days when we were having the arguments about ISO 20022 messages not interoperating with crypto, and I'm saying, yeah, that has to happen, because cross-border payments are generated by the use of fin messages before the actual settlement of funds even happens. So at some point, those two are going to have to tie together and be transmitted in unison in order, for this to work properly. Well, they're working on that. This is starting to happen, especially for SMEs, small and medium enterprises. It came into fruition, amongst other things. What you really need, aside from the utility, is the demand. Okay, and that's what we're waiting on right now. Now, aside from the demand, there has to be, and I've been trying to preach this. Oh, there's a party going on over here, huh? There has to be demand for the asset, and the applications that leverage the asset, essentially, prior to us seeing anything, right? Listen. All right, this is the God honest truth, okay? And I've gotten so much pushback on this, but I'm just going to tell you, and maybe some of these guys out here are not going to say it for whatever reason, whether it be monetization and clicks and views, but the reality of it is this. Jack shit isn't going to happen until decentralized applications are a necessity for institutions, and legislation is passed globally, essentially, for crypto assets, especially off and on ramps like stablecoins. Okay, people can say what they want to say about built-in regs and this application, but this mechanism or platform doesn't need congressional legislation. Okay, you keep listening to that, and I'm saying that because now I'm seeing a bunch of hype around this November, coming out of nowhere, right? And people are looking at the ISO 20022 stuff, and look, while ISO 20022 messages will correlate with DLT and crypto assets for the purpose of payments, an institution has got to be out of their damned minds to touch that and invest into these assets to transmit cross-border payments absent of a correspondent system with no regulatory protection in place. All right, that's just not going to happen. All right, so anyone that's telling you that we don't need congressional oversight or regulatory oversight and law essentially to make this happen so that institutions feel comfortable satisfying their demand for the asset and safely jumping in with their money is out of their minds. You're insane, okay? And you can call me, a punk or say I'm stupid or I don't know what. I don't care, all right? I'm too old to care about name calling at this point. I'm going to take a look at these comments. It's soggy over here, man. What the? Yeah, it's good to see everyone too, man. I appreciate it, guys. I'm on Twitter. For those who don't know, I'm always doing spaces and kicking it on there and chopping it up with my fellow nerds. But yeah, right. Something else to note, and this is another conversation that we've had on Twitter a lot about the ISDA, the International Swapping Derivatives Association. Now, it's been pointed out that this is a networking body essentially, but when you research the ISDA, it states that their derivative swapping mechanism is essentially at the core of the derivatives market. Now, I get it, the member body that Ripple joined regarding the ISDA, along with Algorand, could be seen as just a networking platform for events and other things, but what do you think is going to happen with that relationship being established between Ripple and Algorand with this body? Who do you think they're going and sitting around, right, when they're networking? See, this is the thing that people have to understand about companies like Ripple, companies like Algorand, companies like Stellar. Before you start seeing massive usage, what do you think you're going to see first? You have to build relationships. Why do you think they started at the top and started dealing with folks like the IMF, the BIS, right? And I'll tell you something right now. They are dealing with the BIS, and I'm going to tell you how I know they're dealing with the BIS. So there was some ambiguous comments made by James Wallace regarding Enbridge and the XRPL technology, essentially, and cross-border payments and the exchange mechanism and how it would benefit in that type of an environment when they tested Enbridge. Now, did he definitively come out and say, there's another podcast he did where he was a little more direct, but the one that Digital Perspectives posted is a little bit more ambiguous. I'll have to dig. I got to remember to do that. I came across it because when I saw Brad Kimes's post with James Wallace, who, by the way, is the vice president of central bank engagement with Ripple, it made me go dig a little bit deeper. So I need to just go find the other video that I'm thinking about. But with that being said, right, these relationships that are being built for a reason, all right? And like I said, Ripple didn't start it doesn't seem like they started at the very bottom, right? Maybe at some point long ago, but you got to look at where they were at a few years ago. These guys were already sitting at the table with the IMF. That's a big deal, okay? And this is how partnerships and trust and networking is established for companies like this, so that they can essentially reel organizations in and institutions in, right? Now, with that being said, okay, back to the BIS situation. I did a space, really an interview, right? It was my space, but I hosted an interview, and I had none other than Mr. Daniel E. Don, who is the solutions architect for the Bank of International Settlements. I'm going to repeat that. He is the solutions architect, and advisor for the Bank for International Settlements. It was a very good space. It was very informative. And Daniel, if you're watching this, I definitely appreciate you taking time out of your day to come on Twitter. I actually had that space with him at 4 in the morning Pacific time. So I definitely wanted to make sure that, my viewers and listeners could benefit from that. And we talked about bridge currencies. We talked about Ripple being used as a model. Now, I mentioned it in the space with him, but I didn't say James Wallace's name at the time. And I want to offer a disclaimer that anything is said in that space is not an official opinion of the Bank for International Settlements. It is simply Daniel Edon's personal opinion. But what people didn't know is that Ripple actually hosted a hackathon event where they were allowing enterprise level developers and they were allowing independent developers to come into the hackathon event and showcase their skills by building solutions on Ripple's private and Ripple's public platforms for central banking digital currencies. Guess who was a judge on the panel? One of them, I think, was the CEO of either MasterCard or Visa. One of them, I can't remember his name. And then another judge on the panel for Ripple's hackathon event was none other than Mr. Daniel Edon, solutions architect and advisor for the Bank for International Settlements. Now, I know what most people will say. Well, I haven't seen any proof definitively that the central banks are doing anything with Ripple outside of Palau, and that's not a real central bank, and blah, 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 blah. Hey, I get it, right? There's nothing wrong with applying logic and saying things are ambiguous. They're shadowy. No one's saying anything definitive. I can't find anything in the documentation. They owe me an explanation because I want to see it firsthand, written out to me like I am a toddler, right? But here's the other thing that you have to realize with that, okay? Relationships matter, right? What was he doing there? Why was Daniel Edon now? And this is what's even more interesting. The BIS doesn't really mention Ripple or XRP that often. I've maybe probably only seen like 1 or 2 mentions of it from the BIS. I've seen way more from the IMF and the World Bank regarding XRP and XLM than I have ever seen from the BIS. So then that begs to pose the question: if Ripple and XRP are rarely mentioned by this entity, then why would someone as important as Daniel Edon be on their judging panel for their hackathon? What that tells you is that these guys associate a lot more than you and I know. Okay, I'm going to tell you the problem that I'm seeing in the space. All right. And this is a problem. And this isn't even directed at one person or one group of people. It's the space as a whole, right? And I'm talking about the speculators. One of the biggest problems here is that you see a lot of people who are entitled. They want institutions at the level of the World Bank, the IMF, the BIS, the World Economic Forum, which obviously they've mentioned Ripple and XRP and Stellar and Algorand and all sorts. I don't know how many times. It's SWIFT and everyone else out there that's a large body and small and medium institutions to come out and just say it, right? They owe us. Like, that's what people feel like in the space. You need to say it definitively because you owe me as a speculative investor an explanation for what's going on, okay? And that is not going to happen. You will listen to me, okay? And I'm going to say this, all right, because I don't know everything, all right? Just because I work in tech doesn't mean I know everything about the space and that I'm a God-given expert on every single thing DLT related. I mean, the real truth is that a lot of these blockchain and DLT programs that are being written are written in the same programming languages that I deal with at work, that I've been dealing with for years. Java, you freaking C++. I mean, I could go on and on. Like, so I've seen some of the same things and worked with them and dealt with them and coded and have worked with these same mechanisms that I would work with if they hired me for a blockchain engineer job. It wouldn't be that much different. It would just be, at that point, I'd just be developing an application with a different purpose. So instead of developing some sort of a tool where, let's say we're at a job and Active Directory, for whatever reason, doesn't give us the permissions that we need because we don't have PAA. privilege access account, right? So for whatever reason, we're government oversight, we're in the project management realm, but there's still systems functions that we need to do essentially to be able to carry on our duties. And the enterprise grade Active Directory tool, well, we can use it, but there's just certain things we can't do in it. Well, I'd have to develop a solution that would still allow me to interface with Active Directory and to have administrative functions. For example, I was the file share manager at N6 as a systems analyst, right? FSM was one of my many duties. And in doing that, I controlled the highways. No worries, ladies. I controlled the highways that you go into for your servers to go into your work locations on the network. So your folders that you go into, those little trees, I had built that, right? Well, built some of it. Okay, I'll be transparent. A lot of that infrastructure was there, but I had to maintain it and rebuild and then build onto, right? The security groups that you would use to access those folders that you don't see on the front end, I was building in the back end and then applying. And then, it's one big spider web of interop, right? But I couldn't build the security groups in Active Directory because when you're at a project management level and you don't have a PAA, well, it makes things a little bit more difficult. So now I have to go in essentially into another interface that was developed as a separate application from the main AD interface, but it still allows you to interact with it because it's tied to the Exchange server with the same functions, just added permissions like mail enabling for distribution and security groups, right? So with that being said, with me being in IT and me looking at this stuff from a tech perspective, like I stated, it would be no different if I were to, I mean, there would be differences, right? It'd be a different layout for whatever you're coding, but like I said, the goal is to build some sort of an application or interface that's conducive to the environment that you're dealing with, right? That solves some sort of a problem, all right? And that's what a lot of people don't get. And there are some pretentious folks in the tech community. I know, I'm in it, so I know that people can be dismissive. I know people can shoot people down, but there are some of us who are coming from a place of, oh, that's what they're using. See, we didn't just look at what the BIS of these institutions are saying regarding the technology. We go and we look in different places. We look at GitHub and look at code and look at the layout and the infrastructure of these apps that are being built, and okay, so this is what they're doing, this is how the code is written, this is what this application is hopefully going to solve, and this is what the testing results here on GitHub are saying are associated with this, right? So it's a different perspective. I'm not saying it's necessarily better or worse. What I'm saying is that a lot of this stuff is familiar to us. And so when I'm looking at this is why I've always told people when it comes to distributed ledger technology and blockchain, the decentralized application is going to serve, in my opinion, at the core of what draws the institutional money in, right? Let's take a look at these comments. Sterling G said, I do InfoSec, so I get it. Yep, so do I. Good old CSWF workers. Yes, I will save the live. When T goes live, XRP price pumps. I don't know about all that. JP Morgan? Oh, yeah. They'll... Chef Dave, okay, so that's an interesting comment. He said 5 years, no one wants to admit it. For price appreciation for XRP, well, I mean, I always told people I had a 10-year window. So Chef Dave, my outlook is a little bit more conservative than yours, truth be told. 5 years is actually kind of quick. I mean, what is it, 2023? That put us at 2028. And if it takes only 5 years to see full adoption and utilization and demand for the asset and price appreciation, oh well. That's really not that bad at all. As far as no one wanting to admit it, the truth is no one knows. You don't know. I don't know. None of the speculators know. And you know why they don't know? Because no one knows when institutions are going to flood in with their money. But I can tell you what I do know. They're not going to do it until regs and legislation are cemented, right? No one is going to trust billions inside of an asset class that's just not regulated, that has no protections. You got to think about it like this. If there's no sound legislation and regulation, how in the hell are the institutions going to benefit off of us holders when if we go in, there's nothing legally requiring them to insure our assets? See, these are the things you guys aren't thinking about. Where everyone is sitting here saying, oh, well, you know, obviously institutions are exploring private DLT options. Look, all right, the reality of that is this. They need consumer interfacing for several reasons, right? In order to draw in consumer interfacing with these environments, you're going to need to guarantee these investors that if they come see you as an institution, that in the event of a catastrophe, hack, or something catastrophic, that their assets are insured, or people will walk out. No one's going to deal with JP Morgan if there's nothing in the fine print or bold print that tells them they're protected. I wouldn't. I'd be like, thank you, and I'd walk my behind right out, and I wouldn't deal with them, right? Are you going to do it? So what the hell makes you think an institution's going to deal with the asset if there's no regs? Number one, to protect them. Number two, to protect the client base that they're going to target, essentially, to benefit off of. It's not rocket science, man. So with that being said, then you got to ask yourself this, because this part is all speculation. Does it take 5 to 10 years from now to see significant appreciation in price regarding utilization of the asset and regarding demand for the assets? Not just one, but several. That depends. You have to ask yourself this from a U.S. perspective. I just told you my situation, right? And I make a decent living. I do all right for myself, okay? But I told you all of the situations that I was dealing with. And then I told you guys, that even with, I got a coworker, I'm not even going to say what he makes great money, right? But for the amount of money he makes, he can't even afford a house out here. The average median price, if you did, and this is why I jumped in the market in 2017, the average median asking price for a home on just in this area alone is like almost $6. And then the interest rates are nearing 7%. Now, if I were to do a refi, I'd get like 5%, right? Which is low for this environment, but it's still high, right? So with that being said, if you look at that, if you look at the inflationary environment that we're dealing with, if you look at the liquidity crunch, you look at the insolvency of the banks and institutions that's coming to light, the over-leveraging, the criminal fraudulent activities essentially that are going on, right? The de-dollarization from other nations, and we can't say it's not happening because over 100 nations just flooded the United States with US Treasury bonds. Like, there are so many people out here who don't have a clue what the hell is going on right now, who aren't paying attention to anything with any of the countries outside of the US and what their desire is regarding doing business with us. Our debt, you name it. It is out of control. And you can sit there in a fantasy world and think it's not, and think that because we're a superpower, we're just gonna be okay. We'll just mosey on through it. No, the elites that run the country essentially and aid in running the world will be okay. You will not, potentially, right? Unless you move smartly in this environment. Now, with that being said, eventually it gets to a point where everyone feels the crunch from the things that I just named, right? And then you have to ask yourself this, as a country, let's exclude the rest of the world and just look at the US. Do you really think the United States has 5 to 10 years left of this and it's getting worse every month? That, my friends, is what you call a geopolitical accelerant. All right, it's going to get so bad to a point they're not going to have a choice but to implement something different. All right, do they want to? They probably don't. I'm going to be honest. They're already in federal verbiage calling us, who hypothetically hold assets, because I can't confirm or deny I hold them, because as I always say, all of us in this community don't hold any crypto and we're broke. But they're already calling us in tax verbiage and federal verbiage wealthy digital asset holders. Why are they referring to us as wealthy in future tense or present tense, excuse me, when it hasn't happened yet? That's weird, isn't it? Wealthy crypto holders. Really? I tell you right now, I don't hold any crypto, but if I did, I certainly wouldn't feel wealthy right now. Would you? Why do you think they're doing that? Why do you think they're saying that? The majority of people that are in the crypto asset space are not wealthy. They're not. You may have a few, but in comparison, the entire community, no, man, not even close. Remember, they've been testing and setting up their systems for years now. So a 10-year window isn't from 2023 and up, but more like from 2011 to 18 and up. So 2025, 2027 can't get here any quicker but soon. Good point, Chris. XRP is not designed for intrabanks. Is designed, okay. Delta Ghost Zero said XRP. Now, what's ironic here is that he called a bunch of people dumbasses, but let's take a look at this grammatical structure here, where he says XRP is not designed for intrabanks. It's not for retail. Dumbass. Well, Delta Ghost, I think you should probably rewrite that so that the dumbasses in here can understand it. I'm just saying. And for the record, Delta, actually, XRP will have several use cases that involve retail as well. Just so you know. What do you think is going to happen with those global public liquidity pools? Who do you think is going to be jumping into them outside of institutions? I'm just saying. You need to go and read India's article from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering regarding private and public DLT interoperability, and look into why private consortium related environments, right? Not my words, their words. Well, they're my words too, because I've said it before. I said it before I even read the article. But there are certain functions and features that consumers need to be able to access, and consumers could be companies, they could be organizations, they could be retail like you and I, that cannot be accessed or implemented within private consortium permissioned related environments. So if you think that retail is not going to have any sort of a part or role in the XRP ledger or token in this coming up revamp of the monetary system, then I don't know who's the dumbass here, brother. Sorry. Just saying. But hey, I'm used to it, man. I know. It hurts to see someone like me on here putting out knowledge. You guys can't stand it, some of you. It's all good, though, because I'm not going anywhere. So, with that being said, what are my thoughts on Chainlink? Oh, I think Chainlink's useful. It's a CCIP related platform. So Chainlink would, and I've touched on this before. I think I mentioned it in the Crypto Lulu interview that I did regarding a CCIP bridge that would allow Swift and other platforms, right? Because Swift probably isn't going to be the only platform to adopt some sort of a CCIP related solution, which allows these interfaces that are using FIN related messages to interact with a DLT environment of their choice that corresponds with the message that was generated. I'll give you an example. Let's say within Swift's environment, you have a token server, which is where the crypto is held, and then you have what's called a DTI, which is another ISO standard, which is, I think it's 24615, which is a digital token identifier, which couples essentially with that message, right? So if they generate a message out of the messaging server, the token server would have the DTI guide it to the proper token. The token then attaches itself to the message. It then travels down a CCIP, cross-chain interoperability protocol bridge, over to whatever specific DLT interface corresponds with the message's function. So if it's a cross-border transaction of sorts, then maybe Swift's platform could interact with XDC, XRP, or XLM. If it's some sort of a smart contract related function, then maybe it goes, to some sort of an ERC20 platform or Hedera or Algorand or something of that nature, right? Etc. Right? And that's just, my theorization from looking at it from a tech perspective on how you could see something like Chainlink benefit some of these environments. Yeah, Chris, don't worry about Delta Ghost. He's a long time troll of the channel. Really, truth be told, he's probably, no offense to the LGBTQ, but he's probably a secret homosexual fanboy, obsessed, crazed stalker of mine who, can't get enough of coming onto the channel. And he shrouds his true feelings of obsession and lust behind insults. So that's the kind of character that you're dealing with, and that's a lot of the type of characters that you're going to deal with in the Twitter and YouTube community. You got a whole bunch of weirdos that have some sort of delusion of grandeur attached to themselves, who think that they're on top of the world, and they can talk to people any type of way that they want and say anything, and there's no repercussions because they're probably 500 pounds and scared of society, hiding behind a keyboard, living out their fantasies vicariously through social media platforms to make themselves feel tougher. So I wouldn't even just let that guy be to himself. quiero la salchicha. Andrew's stupid. How do you think the Bitcoin halving will affect the price? Oh, I think we'll definitely see some price action due to the halving. Yeah, he's a man fan. Yeah, that's why. Yes, the T's crypto spot lust is real. He's a man fan. It's all good. You don't have to answer, but why don't you hold crypto? I can't confirm or deny that I hold any. That's all I'm gonna say. Was Delta Ghost talking to the Moon guy? No, he called. Well, I don't know who he was talking to. I thought he was talking to me. If he's not talking to me, then I'm sorry, Delta Ghost. My bad. And that comment wasn't even just directed at him. It was directed at any troll that gets on my page and says stupid shit. So Delta Ghost, if you were talking to someone else, I take that back. But it looked like you were talking to me because I was the one talking, unless someone in the comments said something dumb. And if you did, then do a little bit more research. Zum to Zaman doesn't quite flow as nicely, but oh well. Delta Ghost said H Dow. He said, okay, I figured I just had to try to push to clear that. See, I got to start looking at the comments more. Because I didn't even see that exchange. I just saw what I said about retail, etc., and then I saw his comment. And I'm like, oh, are we being spicy today? But no, he wasn't talking. He wasn't talking to me. XDC has no competition. I think you're right. I don't think it does. I mean, XRP and XLM wouldn't even be competitors either. That's a hybrid asset that enterprises are going to use on a large scale when they're ready. Will the SEC settle before the trial begins? If they're smart, they will. I mean, the SEC can't win against Ripple. I'm sorry. They that's not going to happen. Lumen Swap? Are you talking about XLM's version of Uniswap or XSwap, their swap protocol? I think anything that allows developers to build projects at a low cost and then swap onto those networks with them is a good utility based project. But for Lumen Swap in particular, I'll go and do some more research. I've been trying to find it. Like, I know that sounds goofy, but King X said, answer my question, B. Don't be scared. Well, what was your question, King X? You are not the only commenter in here. So, King X, I'm not going to scroll all the way up and look at your question again. Ask it again instead, so I don't have to go through a bunch of other comments. Plug and apply. Don't know about it, but I know about XSP. I've actually done a video on it. Quant, I've touched on Quant before. I think Quant's a quality project, or overledger, I should say. GBEX, I actually like GBEX. GBEX has a super high supply, though. Why didn't you go to the party last week? Real talk, most influential person in this space. I just had a lot of stuff going on, man. Number one, you got to remember, so where I work at, the kind of stuff we deal with, we're a level above essential, if that makes any sense. We're actually in our own category. And when it happened, leave until further notice was canceled from that week through the month of October. Why did they do that? Well, they did it because if you took leave, you would have had, in the event of a shutdown, to go into furlough status. So, like, let's say I would have went on leave and went to New York, right? Had I gone to New York and the leave was canceled, they would have furloughed me. And even though I was on leave, I wouldn't have gotten paid for that day or days that I was in New York. So dealing with that, it was just one of those things where I'm like, man. And then I was hearing, like, I got a notice about the proper party stating that, oh, if you don't make it in time, you may not even get in. We only have room for 2,000 people. And then Rose and Lady K and them were on Twitter posting videos at the proper party, and the line was like 20, 30 blocks. And I'm just like, I'm going to be very pissed off if I go all the way from Seattle, Washington to New York and I can't get in the party. Now, thankfully, I have a bunch of family out there in Manhattan and the Bronx. So it would have kind of been a win-win, but I still would have been very angry had I not been able to make it in there. But the next event that happens, I will be there. I will be there because more than likely there's not going to be this dumb crap going on with the government shutdown. Insane Clown Posse. Yes, I saw Crypto Hulk's military picture. But you're the dude, though. I am not the dude. I am a dude. I mean, come on, man. Yeah, look, all right. Nobody views me. I mean, you guys are great, but most people are not going to view me as one of the most influential voices in the crypto space. They make little freaking posters of, all the most influential people in the space all the time. You may see Versam, Lulu, and no hate on any of those guys and a bunch of others, and Solomon, and, my face and name is never going to be on any of those posters. And I'm okay with that, right? My goal with getting into the space isn't about the notoriety for doing what I'm doing. It's not about the bright lights and everyone putting me up on a pedestal. It's just about helping people like me. Like, I'm not some special dude, man. I'm just a regular guy that's been in IT for, a long time, that's sharing his perspective. Right? They don't have to give me my flowers because at the end of the day, I didn't do it for that. You don't have to put me on a poster. You don't have to call me one of the most influential voices. The people who know who I am, and they know what I know, and they know that I'm a quality person, and they know what I'm about. So I don't need a proper party. I would have loved to have been there. I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, I had other circumstances. And I wasn't in a rush to get there to prance around like some celebrity, man. That's not me. Jordan Pick said, we all know why. Davey, and see, my homie Davey, and Davey was there. Shout out to Davey. Me and Davey and Joe and the homies, We all kicked it in the Bronx when I was out there seeing family. He said, you break it down better than the rest and you're down to earth. No, I appreciate that. Said, nah, F all that. You know your stuff. They're YouTube peeps. I think Stronghold is a decent project, but I'd have to dig into it a little bit deeper. T, think an XRP ETF will be approved? And if so, that have price appreciating effect in your humble opinion? Yes. I'll say this. There's a little birdie that I'm not going to mention because I don't mention people's names who told me there is an XRP ETF in the works. Just so you know. That is coming. And yes, it will... Bitcoin, why do you think they're delaying the ETF approval? The SEC knows what's going to happen because that's going to be the segue into institutional adoption and accumulation, right? Once they start issuing these ETFs out for crypto assets, it's over. Well, and then at that point, what else do you think has to happen? Regulatory clarity and legislation, because you can't have those ETFs established without law being in play to protect investors, right? Or regs. T, you're a weapon. What a I appreciate it, man. What are you going to do if you discovered that XRP is deemed as a security by financial regulators at the end of all of this and you didn't know that? That's not gonna happen. It's over. That's over. You do know that, right? That's over 100%. The token itself will never be deemed a security. That can't happen. Not to mention the SEC tried to appeal it and they were just told you will not appeal this. This is now a matter of law. So that doesn't happen. Overledger versus Hyperledger? Ooh, that deserves its own video. But I would say this, Hyperledger is a conglomerate of a bunch of different companies and technologies. And Overledger would essentially serve, for layman's terms, as the interoperable glue connecting enterprise and institutional grade clients to their networks of choice, right? See, a lot of people have the conception in their mind that Quant is essentially a DLT platform that's going to do what these other platforms are doing, but better. But in reality, what they're really going to do is connect these networks for their clients, essentially, to connect to them so that they can all talk to one another, right? So Hyperledger, I see some similarities between them, but they're different, right? I mean, for me, I would be more so trying to compare Overledger versus Interledger, instead of looking at Hyperledger Fabric versus Overledger. That's a little different, but nothing wrong with the question. Dumb question: where can I get XTC? You can hypothetically buy it on Bitrue with a hypothetical PN. If you are a United States citizen and that was for entertainment purposes only, please, YouTube, leave me the hell alone. I know you guys have been attacking crypto influencers. That was just for entertainment purposes. Oh, and you can buy it on Uphold. XRP will never have two different prices. XTC is a settlement token as well. It's just not... The XTC token, look, anything with an X in front of it that's attached to an agnostic platform can serve cross-border function. But XTC is more so rooted in smart contract functionality, right? And it also has hybrid capability, which means it can be transmitted into private environments used in public environments as well. XRP, the token itself, is a foreign exchange mechanism, essentially, right? And a vehicle for cross-border payments as well. But the FX utility, in my opinion, makes XRP much more valuable than the cross-border transaction utility associated with it. Not saying that both won't have a significant effect on the value of the token in the future, but you start talking about derivatives, man, I mean, hang it up at that point. But that's the difference. One's smart contract based, one's liquidity, payment, and FX based, right? T, if you had $8,000 to invest in the X coins, how would you do so? Also, asking the chat, that you'll have to ask the chat. Like, I'd have to look at the price of the tokens and see what they're at. But I tell you what, XDC and XRP would be my targets, hypothetically speaking. Not official financial advice at all. If it wasn't for Tia, I would have sold from frustration and all those clickbait YouTubers. Now I understand what I hypothetically hold. Banks ready November 19th. We look, folks. All right. Now I'm seeing this rhetoric, and I'm not going to say you guys are wrong because look, you guys very well could be right. But I'm going to say the same thing I said last November. Could you see movement? Well, sure, right? If they decide to implement this stuff and start integrating the ISO 20022 messaging with crypto and DLT for the purpose of payments, foreign exchange, global trade and finance, etc. But what did I say last year? Nothing happens without lawsuit resolution, regulation, legislation, and what's the last one, folks? Classification for digital assets. Okay, so I've seen I've seen all the remember the 5th of November talk circulating again, because Swift and these folks tend to like to do stuff around November. All right, and it is exciting because it is a foundational building block to get us closer to an environment where crypto is integrated with Fin messaging for the purpose of cross-border payments, foreign exchange, global trade and finance, etc. But it may not be more than a foundational building block at the moment, which is important. But if price action doesn't happen because those things, those 4 things that I've always named, haven't fully happened yet, then don't be discouraged. All right, so be cautiously optimistic about November. Yes, I'm leaving the live up. I think Brad's tattoo is pretty cryptic. XRP being an ESDR, I don't know how that would. Well, here's the thing, right? If it's an ESDR, I don't know how the global public liquidity pools would function with XRP being attached to it. Because an ESDR, you'd never see an ESDR sitting in a liquidity pool. I don't know, man. Stellar is one of the chosen ones. I agree with you on that. So I don't know, folks. You know, I just wanted to come on and touch base. Usually I go on Twitter, but I'm kind of sick of Twitter right now. So I figured I'd come on here and grace you guys with my presence. Oh, just kidding. But I wanted to say hi, kind of iron out a few things, give my perspective on a few, and tell folks, look, November talk circulating again, but please be cautious with your optimism, because I am not, look, I already know where this is headed from a tech perspective. I already know what they're looking to do. I already know what they're targeting regarding derivatives and cross-border payments and global trade and finance and NFTs and cross-chain function and automated market makers and global public liquidity pools and the whole 9, right? I already know that, which is why at this point, the only thing I'm worried about, legislation, classification, and regulation. That's it. That's my sole focus from here on out. I don't even care about the tech anymore, because I know enough. Don't know everything, but I know enough to know where they're likely going to be headed regarding the functionality of these environments and assets. Okay, so dates, I wouldn't even focus on it. I'd be looking at law coming into play. I'd be looking at sound regulation coming into play. Do I think they have 5 years? No. Not with Patrick McHenry just becoming the 10th Speaker of the House, who sat right in front of Gary Gensler and told him, look, we're talking about documentation outside of the FOIA that we have asked you for and you have repeatedly refused. If you don't give it up, I will be the first congressman to essentially issue you a subpoena, a congressional subpoena. There are people in Congress, there are folks like Brian Brooks out there, there are people who know just how important a digitized monetary system regarding DLT and blockchain really is to our global economies, and how they could essentially aid in saving us from further turmoil, right? And they're not going to stand for some of this shit that Gary Gensler and his cronies are trying to pull. And he was called out by another congressman to his face. What had I been saying? What have I been saying, excuse me, this entire time about Gary, Goldman Sachs, and JP Morgan? And that congressman looked him right in the face and said, you know what I think, Gary? And I know some of you guys saw this. He told him, I think you are essentially lobbying for these institutions and that you have attacked innovation in this country and certain companies who are doing so and trying to bring solutions to solve monetary issues for our entire global economy, because you are in cahoots with large institutions that are being disrupted by these technologies that are going to be implemented in the future, and you don't want to see that. And you are trying to protect your friends at these big institutions and don't think that we're stupid and that we don't see you. Don't think they don't know what's going on. Okay, some of them may be too lazy, some of them may be complicit, but some of them are gonna fight back, okay? So remember that. Oh, I don't care if they name drop. Like I said, I don't even care about the clout, notoriety, clicks, views, likes, subscribes. I don't care about that. You want to drop names in here? Drop names, man. How about it? I appreciate the support, but don't worry about it. You know what I'm saying? People do that all the time, man. I'm just T. I'm nobody special. I think Gary Gensler will end up being removed from his position. Resign? No, he's too stubborn. But do I think he... I tagged Gary Gensler on Twitter in one of our government laws regarding what he's doing regarding his conflict of interest and financial incentives. And I know he saw it, right? And I told him, as a federal employee, man, I'm going to tell you to your face, you should be ashamed of yourself for what you're doing. You know, that's not okay, man. He knows better than that. And we're supposed to be better than that, man. We're not supposed to be compromised in that manner. Mr. Burns, yeah, there certainly is a striking resemblance there. But all right, guys, I just wanted to, like I said, touch base. I don't want to come on here and bore you guys to death with a 5-hour video saying the same old thing. Hold strong, be patient, and know that regs and legislation, they are coming. We don't have a decade, in my opinion. The American economy cannot afford that, and I don't think the world can afford it, essentially. But we certainly cannot. So be on the lookout. You're going to see dates. You're going to see a bunch of CBPR plus and Target 2 and all this stuff and ISO 20022 in November. Don't worry about any of that. I'm telling you, don't worry about any of that crap. All right? None of that matters. Look for the laws. Look for the regulating of off and on ramps, which are stable coins that are essentially going to serve as the segue into these distributed ledgers and blockchains. And look at the amendments that are passing on these ledgers, these specified ledgers. XLS 45D, 38D, 30D, etc. Like, these are the type of things that I want you guys to focus on, because that's going to tell you more than someone throwing out a date, than someone saying it's going to happen. Yeah, well, they said it was going to happen with Fed. Now I said it wasn't, and now look. People had their damn hearts broken. Oh, I thought with FedNow went live there. Man, it's a domestic messaging-based payment system. It's not cross-border. Well, eventually, well, then focus on that. Don't focus on the launch of something at this point, right? Tell yourself that any date or any significant happening that you see coming into fruition without regulatory clarity, full regulatory clarity for the entire asset space and legislation, is simply a foundational building block. And if you do that and you focus on what I told you to focus on, you'll be there before you know it. God bless everyone. Stay healthy. Thank you for everyone that came through and showed support. I appreciate it, for listening to me ramble about tech babble nonstop. It's always cool to get on here and chop it up with the community. Be patient. Exactly. Sunrise smile. Be patient. And it's a cliche, but Rome wasn't built in a day. And on that note, I'll see you guys soon. Signing out.